In order to allow business users to request Yammer communities through Cloud Governance and/or MyHub, first we have to go into Cloud Governance and set up the Yammer policy. To do that, log into Cloud Governance and go to Settings. And from Settings, within Request Management, we go to Policy. At the top left, we click Create. And our last option is Group Team Community Policy. Click on that. We give the policy a name and optional description. We then assign it a category. And then scrolling down, here's where we choose what the policy is going to be based on. Groups or teams or Yammer community. In this case, we'll select Yammer community. And then we pick our Microsoft 365 tenant. In this example, I only have the one. We then click Next. On step 2 of the wizard, here's where we set up all the properties for the new community. First, we set a storage quota. Now please note, some of these settings are going to be related to the community site, that is, the SharePoint site, and some of them will be related directly to the community itself. You can always tell by either reading the description of that section, or right in line in the text itself. Wherever you see the phrase site come up, that's going to refer to SharePoint. After we set the site quota, scroll down and we see some external sharing settings for the Yammer community site. So you're going to recognize these settings as they would apply to SharePoint. Down even further, we get to the community lifecycle management. Now this essentially allows people to make these types of requests through cloud governance in relation to the Yammer community. So do I want people to be able to request deletion of the community, extension of the community lease, enable community policy changes, or changing the site quota, which I set a little bit further up on this form. Other settings a little bit further down will also connect back to these settings. For instance, if I enable lease management for the Yammer community, which essentially sets a timer for how long the community should be active without being released, essentially having that lease re-upped by the Yammer community contact, well then I have to enable people to request an extension of that lease. It will tell you that within the descriptions. Below the lifecycle management options, you have the inactivity threshold. The inactivity threshold here is going to work exactly the same as it does for SharePoint site collections and for Microsoft Teams, in that it essentially is a period of time where no one is using that community. Generate an inactivity threshold task when the workspace has no activities for a certain number of days, weeks, months, or years. And that task will have to go through an approval process. You can see over here on the left, the description breaks down for us exactly what that's going to mean. And effectively, it means that, hey, no one is using this community. Do we still want to keep it around? That is not the same thing as the lease. As we said earlier, the lease is all about setting a specific timer when the community gets created. Again, this is the same functionality for a SharePoint site collection or a Microsoft team. Inactivity threshold means no one's using it. Lease means you get 6 months or you get 1 year. And again, the description tells us that once the lease period runs out, it will generate a lease task so that the contact can decide whether or not they want to keep that, to essentially re-up that lease. The inactivity threshold task is going to be similar to say, hey, we want to get rid of this thing because no one's using it. Because like the lease, the inactivity threshold can also be used to essentially control sprawl and clean up abandoned communities over time. Down towards the very bottom, enable Yammer community site quota threshold. This will send notifications when the site quota is being reached. And we can set who the notification goes to with the use of the cloud governance roles. When you type the $ into that field, or any field that requires you to pinpoint a user, whether it's for tasks that will be generated, whether it's for notifications, whether it's for contacts and ownership or administration, type in the $, and then you can select available related roles. The final two items are deactivated community contact election. If the person who was originally set up as the contact for that AvePoint community has been deactivated in Azure AD, then we can kick off an election process to try to pick who should be the new contact. What you'll see here primarily are email settings, the email template that will be used to notify folks as to whether or not they would like to become the new contact. It will start with anyone who's listed as the owner and then move down through the members. Finally, would you like to enable community renewal? The renewal profiles here are very similar to renewal profiles for SharePoint site collections and for MS Teams, in that you can use it to periodically review permissions, community membership, metadata, and contacts. Renewals is a business process where you periodically go back and review these things to make sure that they are still accurate. So you can build a renewal profile to allow that task to be generated once a quarter, twice a year, whatever you like, and then send that to someone like the community owner, so they are then tasked to formally go and perform those tasks for you in a way that we can review and we can report on in Cloud Governance. If I have everything set up the way that I like, then up at the top we click on Save and Activate. And that policy is now there and active for use in brand new Yammer community service requests, as well as for Yammer community imports into Cloud Governance to bring in existing Yammer communities. Thanks for watching this short video on how to create a Yammer community policy in Cloud Governance.